We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So it begins.
You know how much I sacrifice?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are Sex People! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft Services.
Hey, Trent.
Hi, Parth. You're looking well.
Thank you. You're looking well as well.
Jinx, double jinx, you and me cook. We have a film podcast.
Didn't actually say it at the same time. What have you eaten most recently?
My parents made dinner, but something I sort of recently realized, and my parents are so nice, letting me live at home.
What are you about to say?
Making a delicious dinner every single night that most of the time I happily indulge in. But something I recently realized is that as a 24-year-old, whenever you want to, you can just opt out. If you're not interested in if you're really just not in the mood and what they made, you can just be like, I'm going my own way. And tonight I went my own way. They made some delicious pasta with some delicious looking sauce, and I was like, no thanks. And I just made a little bacon, egg, and cheese breakfast wrap and a tortilla.
You had breakfast for dinner.
I'm still a kid at heart, even though, the legal...
Even though you're a big kid now.
My ability to be sent overseas and kill with an assault rifle.
KKK.
I'm ready to go. But there's still sort of the duality of man, and I'm sort of operating in that gray area. So I had that and some mango nectar and some grapes, and it was great.
Wow, it sounds like you had a really nice full meal.
It was a beautiful day outside.
It was a nice day outside.
Yeah, what about you?
Speaking of how nice it was outside, I contemplated seeing The Amateur in a movie theater. In IMAX.
What a great movie title.
I saw how nice it was outside and was like, actually, I'm going to enjoy how nice it is outside, and went for a walk instead. And I'm pretty happy with my choice. But as far as what I ate most recently, my mom coming home from school she is a teacher, coming home from school this past Friday, something like that, came home with like a brown paper bag and handed it to me.
Liquor bottle inside?
Mm-hmm. It's been tough. It's hard on teachers. And then I look inside, and it's a pile of sugar cookies. And I was like, where did this come from? And I think that there was some event at the school or something, and the teachers were given a bag full of sugar cookies. And so I still haven't had dinner. As of recording, it's 8:44 p.m. But
Past dinner time.
Yes, but right after
most
this, I will be having
households.
dinner. But I was feeling a little peckish, and so I had the last sugar cookie.
The brown bag detail jumps out at me. It's like the sugar cookies were a secret.
Well, sugar cookies, or cookies in general, kind of do need to be kept a secret from me, because I eat cookies like I'm the cookie monster.
Because you're a problem around some cookies. It's funny you mentioned that. A coworker I recently had, really overwhelmingly positive person, overwhelmingly competent person. This person was a vegan. They were sober. And I was like, I'm absolutely overwhelmed by how productive and how well-rounded and well-grounded this person is. And I said this to a different coworker, and they said, that's all true. But if you leave this guy alone with a pack of Oreos, it's game over. So even people who aren't eating meat and have their lives together, leave them around some cookies. It's everyone's got something.
As a little kid, I would eat 2 sleeves of Oreos.
And now, when you go in your recovering lifestyle, when you go to just take out some Oreos, how many do you grab? 3 or 4?
3 or 4.
That's standard.
Because the thing is, if I grab one, then it's I'm just going to keep coming back and grab one. So I'm let's just be realistic about it. And then I can be I grabbed a bunch, and now we're good to go. Speaking of which, I think our intro is pretty good to go. Should we cue that?
Hot to go. Chapel Roan. Hot to go. Cue it.
Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on the picture. And last week we had Philip Messina, production designer of Black Bag, but it was only part 1. And Trent, what is this week's episode?
Audience, I hate to break it to you, this is part 2. If you liked part 1, you're gonna love part 2. So the cool thing about Philip Messina, not only did he give us his time and he was like a super cool guest and gave us some cool information, just to go down his resume for a second. Parth, the Oceans trilogy,
It's true.
8 Mile, the Hunger Games quadrilogy,
Venom.
and he's worked with Steven Soderbergh like seeming sort of like a
I
lot.
think he said
but-
something like 14 movies, he said last week.
Yeah, I remember in the interview I was like, "What did you guys work together?" Like, I don't know, like 9 or 10 times. He was like, "Try 14, man."
Yeah.
He wasn't a great. It was more.
No,
just,
he was very nice about it.
It was more just super cool, and it was like, whoa, 14. That's pretty crazy. But I feel like I'm going crazy having to withhold you guys
Wow,
from
Trent.
hearing this.
You're becoming a fucking pro, a transition king yourself.
I stalled out for a second, but then I brain blasted all my energy. Okay.
But let's blast this interview right into the listener's ear. Let's cue the interview. You spoke a little bit about how Soderbergh is his own DP and has been now for a while. And in this movie, it's sort of apparent to me that there's a lot of inbuilt lighting fixtures and stuff like that. Can you talk about, because that's apparent in the dining room scene, it's apparent in the opening shot through the nightclub. Can you talk about how having to incorporate those lighting fixtures affects your design?
Yeah, that's a lot of it. Is what we end up dealing with is the built-in lights, and he will set lights, but usually very small. He doesn't light it like other people light films. It's really practical light driven. So I was just thinking about that very early on. One of the notes I got, I had this kind of ornate cornice in the dining room and the living room of George and Catherine's house, and Steven said, "I'd like to put cove lighting in there," knowing that he's going to be sort of like your camera is, like you're looking up into the ceiling, and he wanted the ceiling to have life to it. And thank God for LED strips, because I had a cornice with not a, like if it was the old days and I had to try to hide tubes in it or something, it would have been a nightmare. But there was enough room to hide LED strips in those cornices, and it worked out great. But yeah, one of the first things we talked about was the table that's lit from itself. And we had done that. If you look at some of the Ocean's movies, we built tables. I built tables out of plexiglass that we've made like light boxes out of. I've made slick tables with center panels for, all for him. And I knew on this one I wanted to do something a little bit different because I wanted this lighting setup to have texture to it. And Steven, we were trading pictures, and he sent me a picture of, I believe it was his place in New York, and he had put a couple of like just hanging ball lamps on a table. And we were actually talking about, I think, something else. It wasn't even about that. And I noticed those, and I was like, oh, that's a really cool idea. So we kind of filtered that into, we had these hand-blown globes that were placed along the table, and they were all individually wired and lit. And we did camera tests on them, and we really liked sort of the texture of the crackle glass on them and the kind of warm light it gave. So that actually ended up working perfectly. And it allowed us to, in the second dining room scene, when the table is clear, not have those there and have it lit from above with the dining table lamp. So that allowed us 2 separate looks for that. So that actually worked out really well. But yeah, it's kind of all about lamps. It's all about practical lighting. I have to think about where the actors are going to be in the scene. Where am I going to need, especially if it's night, where am I going to need a practical lamp, where the windows are, like stuff that all designers in theory like think about. But I think, especially with Steven, it's very, when we're blocking out a scene, and he generally lets the actors they'll come in and go, "What do you want me?" And he goes, "Let's just play." And like, "Where do you feel comfortable?" So it really ends up being actor driven. And then he finds the angle kind of based on that, which I think is kind of cool. It's not the other way around. So in my prep, I have to think about, if I were the actor, where would I want to be in this scene, and where would I need to stage lights? And then if I were Steven, where would I want the camera to be, and where do I want lights in relation to the actor? So I get it right, I'd say 70% of the time, which is a pretty good batting average. And then once we get up there and we do block the scene, rehearse the scene, then Basically move some lights around to make it natural, kind of redress little areas, just so I know that he has lighting kind of where he needs it for the scene. So it's very kind of fluid that way, it's fun. It's very cool.
The spy offices and like the psychiatrist office, how much is that pre-existing spaces? How much is that a build?
So we found 2 different empty buildings or empty floors within buildings for the spy offices. And we found one, the white one, when George goes up to see Catherine in that conference room, that was an empty floor. And I built all the cubicles. I built the glass conference room. We built Catherine's office into it, but it was just a shell of a floor that and also that sort of that big video room that scene where Pierce is in. Those were all built into that. The darker floor where George first comes in and sees Freddie after the hand stabbing, that whole dark area, then the big video room where he kind of requisitions the satellite, that was all on another building and on 2 different floors. Also Zoe's office, the psychiatrist's office. So all the dark offices were on one building on several floors, and then the light office was in another building across town. So my idea was that if the house was going to be this sort of sensual heart to the film, design-wise, I love the idea of like the spy offices being black and white. And one office was very dark, one office was very light, very kind of like tonally, just really kind of like stark that way. And I felt like they could exist in the same building. Just, in the original script, it was George walks into his office, then goes down the hall and goes into the conference room. And it was all kind of one floor. And I told Steven, I said, look, I found these 2 different places. If we just like have him go up a set of stairs or something, then he's up on another floor and we could change locations. And we actually ended up doing that, which was cool. We all really liked the idea that instead of these offices being kind of like closed in and kind of inward looking, that there were views out into the street. And that's, I think in Zoe's office, he stages the scene where you can see cars coming down the street, looking back at Naomi Harris. Because we had actually toured the real, I think it's the GCHQ offices. We had a contact there. We toured their offices right in the heart of London. And it was just a tall building. I remember it's like there was a Shake Shack in the bottom of it. It was very like they just rented 2 floors and all this stuff was going on. And, and our film is like a little bit more of a hybrid of what that is. They still had secret spaces that we couldn't go tour, but people had windows and they just it was mirrored glass and you couldn't see inside. And we actually used the real building as our exterior for establishing shots. But we're all kind of like, and you look on the directory in the lobby and it says like GCHQ, like floor 7 and 8. Doesn't mean you could get there, but it was very public. There's like an investment firm and an insurance, so it was like, well, let's kind of like, and you look at a film like Slow Horses, which I think has a great design to it. It's very interior. There's no windows in it. It's very kind of insular. And that's sort of a more traditional kind of take on spy offices. And with us, we wanted, even in the satellite room, there's like windows, flanking 2 sides of it. And we just wanted to, it was sort of the idea of like the hide in plain sight kind of thing, kind of like George and Catherine's house, just sort of like reinforce that idea a little bit. Like you never know what's going on behind these windows and these doors. So that was sort of the long way around answering that question, but that was sort of, everything was kind of interconnected that way.
A lot of the movie does take place in these conversations in buildings, but one of the reoccurring sets that's even more out in the open is the lake that Michael Fassbender's character likes to take his boat out on. Can you talk about finding that location? And also later in the movie, without spoiling it too much, there's maybe a body that falls into the water.
Maybe a body. Definitely a rug.
Sure, yeah. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Was that in the real body of water, or was that on a tank?
No, so it was always scripted as a lake, and I scouted a couple lakes, and look, around London, there's no shortage of like these pastoral kind of lakes. And I think one of the early ones I saw had this boathouse in it, which was not scripted, and was literally just like a nugget that was there. And I actually liked the idea. Instead of George, like, I think it was scripted, like he pushes his boat out into the lake. And I always felt like that could get a little awkward, especially when Stokes comes, like them getting into the boat and and Stokes isn't really like a hunting, fishing guy, and how awkward that would be. And I'd seen this boathouse, and I was like, oh, that's kind of great to start in this little bit darkened place and then go out into the light of the lake. So that really, it could have been any number of lakes, but it was really that existing boathouse that drove that decision. And the good thing was it was only like 4 feet deep. So we had people in the water and like waiters. I think our prop guy was like the fish on the other end of the line, pulling the line for the fishing scene. It just made life a lot easier. It wasn't a very deep lake. And there were swans. I think someone asked the other day if like we put CG'd the swans and ducks in. It's like, no, those were there and they were squawking. I think they had to take them out of the audio track more than anything else. It was just it was great. It was like one of those things, like it could have been the hardest location to find or the easiest, and it was kind of the easiest. And then as far as the thing that goes over the side of the boat, we actually used the water tank at Pinewood. They have a fairly large water tank, and with divers, one of the few, if not only, shots that Steven didn't operate. You can see the video. Obviously, we were all up above. You know, he's not a scuba diver, so we had diving guys that were at the bottom, and the boat was like on a guy wire, and it kind of like stopped in the exact spot where the camera was, and there were actually 2 other guys in the boat. That was actually kind of tricky because at first we started with a mannequin in a rug, and it kind of floated. And then like, okay, we're going to drill holes in the mannequin and let the water go through. And then like it went down so slowly. And it's like, now we're going to put weights on the mannequin. But then it became really heavy to kind of get off the side of the boat. And the boat was kind of tipped. It was like this thing. We actually tested it like 3 or 4 times. Like, Jesus. And sometimes it just like torpedoed and went straight down, which he wanted it to kind of come down where you saw the length of it. It's funny, for like a simple thing, it actually ended up being very complicated engineering wise. We ended up putting guy wires on it, and as it fell, there were people pulling. If it started to go too much in one direction, they would pull on the wire to kind of get it to float more kind of the way it is in the film. And he wanted it to land right on top of the camera, so there was a cut, like it went to black. But that was all in Pinewood. But yeah, that was to make that simple little thing. And also the lake was only 4 feet deep. So there was no way we're going to get, the tank at Pinewood was like, I don't know, 20 feet deep or 25 feet deep or something like that.
So as we start to wrap up, I was wondering, while watching the movie yesterday, if there's one cheap trick or something you pull out of your back pocket to sort of like spice up any given scene.
Oh, wow. Well, I worked with the designer years ago when I was an art director, and I noticed that something he was designing was reminiscent of something else I had seen in another film. And his response was, it's okay to steal from other people, just never steal from yourself. And I've actually always remembered that, and I've tried not to, if I've used a trick or a technique, I try not to fall back on that because I want every approach to a film to be as fresh and unique as possible. So look, I'm going to have, a bit of a style, although I really try not to have a style in a pejorative sense. Like Steven, I think we try to let the script kind of tell us what it wants to be. And I think that's the way I really approach it. I don't try to kind of impose my style on it. This famous architect, Mies van der Rohe, years ago, I remember there was a quote from him. He said, the extent to which you have a style is the extent to which you haven't solved the problem. And I've always kind of remembered that as well. And other people may feel differently, like everybody's different, but that's sort of like, those are kind of my mantras that I go by. And, someone was asking about the tree in the glass box the other day. And it's like, that's actually something that an idea I'd been kicking around for a little bit and I'd never used on a film, but I was I'd seen maybe some reference on it. I'd seen something and I thought someday that'd be kind of cool. And this just felt like the perfect application to it. This organic thing in this very kind of like rigid box, having the reflections in that dining room and depending on how you light, you get reflection or distance through it. So I will never use that device. I won't call it that device again because it's played that card. It's done. I got to come up with another card. And it's sort of like my own mind game I play with myself, but it keeps it fresh. And I remember I worked with another designer years ago and I remember it was a hospital set that we were designing for a film. And he said, I've done this before. I know exactly how it lays out. And we laid out a hospital room that looked like every other hospital room, but we were in kind of a specific place. And I always felt like well, let's give it like the specific character to like where this place is. But look, sometimes there's so many things to design in a film, you just want to check boxes, and I totally get it. But I just I try not to approach it that way. So that's my spiel.
So speaking of where you're gonna pull out new tricks, are you working on anything that you can sort of talk about or promote?
If this were maybe a week from now, I could say, but right now there's a couple things kicking around. One especially I'm excited about. It's not. I don't know if I'm going to end up being involved in it, but I'll be happy to come back and scream it from the treetops. So
sure.
Yeah.
So Trent, can I give the big Kahuna final question then?
You can hit him with the big kahuna.
Okay. All right.
So
Cool.
the big Kahuna final question is just, what's the last great movie you watched? And it can be a rewatch or a first-time viewing, but it has to be great, not just good.
It's funny. The minute you said that, look, I could say like any of Stanley Kubrick's films. I would say a film I constantly go back to, and it's burned into my brain because my family gives me so much shit about it, is Old School. I love Old School. I wouldn't call it like a cinematic masterpiece, but it makes me laugh every time. I love that film. That's going to be my answer.
Wow. Awesome.
Thanks so much to Philip Messina. He's the production designer behind such films like the Ocean's Trilogy, 8 Mile, the Hunger Games quadrilogy, and of course, Steven Soderbergh's, I believe, his 36th film,
Ooh, wow.
Black Bag. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure.
What an interview, Trent.
To quote Dr. Seuss, don't cry 'cause it's over. Smile 'cause it happened.
Wow.
So, I'm clutching back tears and I'm smiling because thank you, Philip Messina, and your team for helping us set up this great interview and for giving us your time and for your knowledge about all those dope movies you've worked on. And you are dope as a person and dope for coming on.
Thank you so much, Philip Messina. It was a really great interview. We hope to have you on again for whenever the next Steven Soderbergh joint comes out, like next week or whatever, given how fast he works.
Or if you work on another quadrilogy or trilogy or even just a single movie that sounds interesting, we'd be happy to have you on. You don't have to work on all 3 or 4. It's really great proof of your commitment skills.
But speaking of commitment skills, I hope the audience is committed to this podcast.
And if you want to upkeep that commitment like a good partner,
Partner?
like a good partner,
Craft Services is there.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're a screenager, I love to blog and text and search Google.
You want to be on the interwebs.
Be on the interwebs and go fun gaming, and you have your
farming simulators.
Your LinkedIn and your Dungeons and Dragons and your farming simulator, exactly. You're just gonna head on over to IG.
Wow.
That's what the kids are calling it. I didn't invent it. IG, Instagram. That's pretty happening over there.
Mm-hmm.
Like it.
It's pretty
comment,
radical over there.
Send it. You really can't go wrong. Log in, enter the personal info, and whatever happens, happens.
Well, what should happen is you are following us on Instagram or Twitter.
And Twitter.
And we post weekly updates every time an episode comes out. You can go check us out over there.
Wait, and don't the episodes come out Sunday at 5 a.m.?
They sure do. But if you live in the West Coast, they come out at 2 a.m.
Party time, man.
Well, that's why it's PT, party time.
You're just like so fucked up after like a long night of like in the gutter, and then you do one final line, and you look at the clock and you're like, oh fuck yeah, man, it's 2:01. New Craft Services just dropped.
What the hell is this?
Let me plug in. It's like the addicts on the West Coast who are thrilled after a long night of partying because. You know the thing where it's like, people at like 4:30 a.m. coming home from the club and they see someone like going
Sure.
going on a run. It's like for the East Coasters, it's like you're going on a run, and for the West Coasters, it's like, dude, give me another dose of the acid, and then let's tune into craft services. I would imagine that's what's happening out there. I mean,
Trent and I haven't seen each other for like 2 weeks, and as you can tell,
it shows.
We're feeling pretty crazy.
Yeah, I just feel crazy continuing this episode.
Okay,
know?
There we go.
And wait. You can still watch Black Bag in the theater. Do that if you can. There's some... Parth, am I crazy, or is there some sexual tension between Kate Blanchett and Michael Fassbender? Am I crazy?
Some at least, I would say.
There's some. Parth saw a reflection in that relationship as in his own friendship with the someone from our show, the guest from the Gone Girl discussion.
A very good friend. A
very good friend who just so happened to cover all the Mission Impossible movies. Coincidence? I think not. And the Gone Girl episode. Something like that. Watch Black Bag. Bye, Parth.
Bye, listeners.
Bye, listeners.
We'll see you.